Welcome back, everyone, to Lives with Miranda. I'm so excited. Lena is going to be joining us today, and we are going to be doing a 2025 goals workshop. So if you are in the process of setting your goals for 2025, or maybe they are already done, this is going to be the perfect workshop to learn from a coach who does this professionally, to be able to guide us and not only learning how to set goals, but how to set the right goals, and then also how to implement them correctly, right? Because one, you're either getting caught up in you're setting the wrong goals or you're just not implementing them correctly. That's usually where the biggest challenges people face. So Lena's going to be guiding us today and helping us figure that out. She should be hopping on anytime now. I originally met Lena at the Quarter 4 Go Abundance meetup, and she blew my mind away just by her. I clearly knew she was a leader as soon as I met her, and just the way she's able to really dive deep into goal setting and really get into your mind and make you critically think actually about your goals and why you're setting them and the intentions behind them. I'm really excited for her to just show her magic today. Here she is. She's going to be joining us right now. Here we are. Hello. Welcome.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here. I was just telling them how we originally met at the Quarter 4 Go Abundance meetup. And since then, you agreed to do the live, which I'm so excited. Did you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got started?
Why don't we just make some small talk at first?
Oh, yeah.
Happy New Year. How's it
Happy New
going?
Year. I know. I'm just ready to jump in. I'm so excited. But yes, Happy New Year. How was it? How was your New Year's?
It was good. I don't remember what I did. I think I just went to my parents' house and had some caviar, which I love.
Oh.
Yeah, very chill, very easygoing. It's very snowy here.
Oh.
So,
All right.
yeah.
You're brave. I can't do snow for too long. Longer than a week. I feel like that's as long as I can go in the snow.
It's really pretty, but it's really cold
Yeah.
and a very big pain. So, that's
Oh,
okay.
that sounds amazing. I know mine was pretty low key too. It's so funny. This is my last year in my 20s, and I was like, oh, we need to go out. Even though I worked till 11 p.m., I was like, I need to do something. I'm not staying home. And so we ended up going to a Yard House, which is like a restaurant, because like I got off at 11, so we had an hour to figure out where we were going. We got to Yard House completely dead. We ended up going to In-N-Out and just going back home and watching the ball drop.
That's the one thing that you guys have that we wish we had. I love In-N-Out. Like it
Yeah.
is the first place I go when I like literally land anywhere in California. I'm like, all right, where's the In-N-Out?
Not a bad way to start out the year.
For sure, it's the best.
Oh my goodness. I always forget that In-N-Outs aren't everywhere. I'm
Nope,
so sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. It's probably best that I don't eat it every day. So,
That's true. You're lucky. It's always tempting here.
exactly. Classic adult.
Yep. Yep. Keisha got
Yep.
it. Well, I know we have a bunch of people logging in. Thank you, everyone, for logging in. I got a couple messages actually before this live started saying that this was like perfect time for this type of live, and they were super excited. I was raving about you. So
Aw, you're
I
so
was in
sweet.
awe of
Thank
you.
you.
So I'm excited for them to get to know you.
Awesome. Let's dig in.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about, how you got started and where you are today with your
Started.
leadership, coaching, a little bit of everything.
So I have been an entrepreneur essentially my whole life. I started a tutoring company when I was 18, 17, still in high school, and have kind of done my own thing ever since. Like even during college, kind of did my own thing. I opened a learning center 10 years ago and have been doing that. Um, Started coaching through the Learning Center, like I said, 10 years ago, and have recently, in the past few years, have started to work with more on entrepreneurs and real estate investors in this space and really enjoying life. Like really getting clear on what it is that they want, and it's been a gift.
I love that. So what made you kind of shift more towards entrepreneurs and investors?
I felt like kids are great. I love kids, but the level of action you get and the level of depth isn't fully there. And for me, what's always been really important in everything that I do is being able to like reach depth with people and really talk about things that matter rather than just like surface level BS. So it's been really awesome to dive in and get deep and really kind of get to the core of what they want. I think also just the coaching that I've gotten really changed my life and how I view things. And so I think passing that gift on has been really important to me.
No, I love that. And when did you get coached?
Um, I don't know, probably 4 years ago.
Okay. Wow.
But
And
like that being said, it's not like I stopped. Like I got coached and I was like, okay, I'm good now.
yeah.
I still work with coaches. I
Yeah.
still work on myself. I still try to learn new things and new ways to kind of think about things.
Mhm.
So yeah,
I
5 years
that.
ago
And
through present.
right, because it's a continuous learning process. It's like it's not something that grows with you. It's not something you learn and then you just go off and do, right?
Absolutely.
Do you feel
Absolutely. You just find more blocks and more deeper ways that those blocks are showing up. Like, oh, scarcity. Hey, you again, huh?
yeah. I mean, like, at what point do you feel like you see entrepreneurs and investors like questioning, like, kind of hitting that point to where they're like, oh, I need help outside of just trying to figure this out myself?
I think a lot of times they reach a point of burnout.
Mhm.
They reach a point of like, what am I even doing this for? Or some just kind of see other people doing it really big and they're like, well, how do I get there?
Yeah.
So it's either you want to get somewhere where you're currently not, or you reach a point of like, I am so tired of doing this that like I need perspective, I need something to change.
Okay. I like that. Because like I feel like a lot of like newer investors, they're just kind of swimming through the waters trying to figure this out, but there's so many bigger fish to follow, and I feel like when you try to follow so many, that's when you get lost. And then I think something you mentioned before too is what did you say? You were like, was it goal hopping or goal? I think I have it in my notes. It was like people get distracted by other people's goals rather than just focusing on themselves. And do
Yeah.
you feel like you see a lot of that happening like in the newer year or really
Oh
just
my
in this era of social media and everything else?
I think it's really hard not to get shiny object syndrome where you're like, oh, this person's creating a business. And I think I shared with you, like what I've seen just in terms of trends, back in the day, the hot thing was burr, right? Like everybody was like, oh, I'm going to buy, rent, RRR, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then everybody was like, okay, well, now we're going to go into multifamily. So everybody was all about that.
Mhm.
And then it turned into Airbnbs and they're like, oh, there's a huge market, it's great. And then that started to fall. And now it's kind of buying a business. So I feel like so many people are like hopping on what's new, what's cool, rather than really thinking about like there are many ways to reach wealth and to reach a point of where you feel
Mhm.
successful. And that's different for every person. I think that like as long as you focus on you and you think about if it really aligns with what you want, you end up further than if you try a bunch of things on
Mhm.
and are like, I should be feeling happy, but I'm not. Like, there's power in being able to pivot and change.
Mhm.
So much
Yes.
power in that.
And I love that you mentioned like the feeling happy part because I feel like in this hustle era we go through these phases where we're happy, we're not. It's like it's okay to be unhappy sometimes because you're just so like on top and just so busy. But at what point do you feel like people should be asking themselves, am I in the wrong niche or am I doing the wrong thing
I
rather than
think
pushing through that phase?
happiness is fleeting, which you kind of touched on. What I like to look at and really observe is energetically, do I feel uplifted? Do I feel like this gives me a lot of energy or is it draining me?
Mm.
Because you're not aligned when you feel like, oh, I can't go do that thing because I'm going to be so exhausted afterwards.
Mm.
Like certain jobs I had, I hated my life. And like I knew that I wasn't fun to be
Mm.
around, but that's also because I felt incredibly drained. Like going through the motions felt exhausting to me. And I'm not saying that whatever you choose to do, there won't be parts of it that you're like, this kind of sucks. I don't like this part of it.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is so worth it, where you're like, oh my God, I could break through a wall right now. And so I really pay attention to how it makes me feel energetically. Do I have more energy? Do I have less? Rather than like happiness or not.
I like that. I feel like people don't talk about that enough because everyone's like, oh, I'm just not feeling happy right now. And I'm always like, well, that's okay. But like, what about, is it feeding your soul still? You know? And
Exactly.
so I guess like when, an investor starts and they have a goal, but then they find themselves in the middle of just a web of other people seeing all these other amazing goals, where do you kind of suggest that they start with first navigating and finding out what they really want and kind of, I guess, filtering through all of that to find the one web that they want to stick with?
I've found that if you start with your values rather than your goals, and you start to really outline what things are genuinely important to me. And when I talk about values, I'm not talking about like family or freedom or like things that a lot of people cite. I mean, like, for example, spending time with family is a very specific value. It then becomes really easy to look at all of the goals you have and go, okay, well, where is this being highlighted? Right? Like, where am I actually taking time to spend time with family now? Or where is it that I am working on? Like, so one of the values that I have is fun. So when I look at my goals, that value has to be reflected, because if I'm doing all of these other things and there's no fun in there, I'm not living within all of the values that I have. And I'm not saying that, again, everything that I do is fun. No. But if there's a way to make it more fun, then hell yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. It's so funny. I've never heard someone use that as a value before, which is crazy because fun brings so much joy. And I guess when you say fun, like I guess diving a little bit deeper, like what are you hoping to get out of that fun? Is it joy? Is it peace? Is it just.
I think there's so much we lose in adulthood where we get so disconnected from just the fun that you have as a kid of like creativity and curiosity. Like curiosity is a huge one for me. I love to learn. I love to do new things. And so fun for me is in all of the experiences that I get to have. Whether it brings me joy, whether it brings me peace, like it's going to vary. At the end of the day though, I feel like I'm playing rather than working, and being able to play even in your work is so incredibly important.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that. Everything you're saying, it's so funny. I've literally never heard someone say before. I mean, they've said it in other ways, like very vague, like you want to enjoy what you do, or if you like what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, things like that. But you are getting very, very specific, and I love this.
These also aren't like my own ideas, by the way. Like everything that you hear is not like, oh my God, I'm this genius. I've read a lot of books, I've heard a lot of people talk, and I'm like, that's a really good idea. So I've kind of borrowed it. So everything you're hearing is not my own brainchild. It's all experience or borrowed ideas that I was like, that's a really good point.
Well, this is why we have to continuously learn, right? Continuously grow if you hadn't have kept on with your journey of like loving curiosity and loving to learn, you wouldn't have learned all these things and you wouldn't be here today sharing them. So I love seeing that kind of pattern of life, like how if you do the work, now you have the opportunity and the gift to be able to give that to other people. And I love that. So,
that's actually a big reason of why I coach, is being able to create the impact. And when you think about what that looks like, which is another one of my values, is creating impact. When you think about what that looks like these on entrepreneurs and investors are going home to their families, right? Or they're hiring employees. And so everything that they're learning is now getting like translated onto all of these other people. And if you think about the level of change that can happen through one person just by reaching so many other people, it's infinite and it's beautiful and it's incredibly just inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to see you change so many lives too, and to be able to be and so happy, like just I don't know, I could just feel like you're glowing as you're sharing all of this with
It's
us.
the blonde hair. It's the blonde.
And So I guess, so if one of your clients comes to you and, they say they want, to spend time with family, but they also want to build that security of like financial freedom. I feel like that's what a lot of investors, and if you're listening in, drop your guys' values in the comments so we can use real life, values. But I know one of my values is that I want to spend time with family, but also to not have that fear of that if something were to happen to them, like I wouldn't be able to afford it. And that's kind of where that financial security comes in. So I guess.
I'd argue that fear is a separate thing from anything else, because I'll tell you, no matter how much money you have, unless you work on that fear side of things, it'll never be enough. You'll still want more to feel secure, but you've never really you've never worked on the feeling of security. And at the same time too, like if you think about money, I do a lot of work, and I have done a lot of work on my relationship with money. That's one of like my big things. That's actually how I started with coaching. Like I hired a coach to work on my relationship with money. Money is a feminine force, which means that it flows. And if you think about it too, like money is flowing through us. We're not ever holding on to it. It's not ours to keep, right? And so if you think about it that way, you're trying to create safety in something that isn't meant to keep you safe. So it's very important to work on the relationship piece of, well, what would bring me that feeling of safety, separate from how much money do I need to make, which is a more tactical thing.
Okay. And when you say safe, like, I know you're talking about like the inner work of maybe like what causes that fear in the first place, or are you saying more of I need to figure out exactly like how much money to make?
That's what everybody thinks, but like what I've seen happen over and over and over again, it's the same thing with like any person who works a W-2 job and are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna leave. Okay, well, when I have 20 grand in my bank account, then I'm gonna leave. They get 20 grand. Well, I might have these other expenses pop up, so I'm gonna wait until it's 30.
Yeah.
Like, so people consistently move the goalpost. That's just what they do. They do that with goal setting too, just to bring it back, like full circle. Any goal you make, what I found myself doing was anytime I would hit a goal, and my goals oftentimes were growing the business that I had. And so it would be like, okay, my goal is to have 200 students. I'd hit it, and then I'd be like, okay, what's next? Right? And I never really was like, oh, wow, I hit 200, like, nice job. I just, every single time I would find a goal, I'd hit it, I would just move on to the next goal. And so people do that. If they don't work on all the other stuff, you're just going to keep moving the goalpost. It doesn't really matter how much money you make, you're always going to want more, which isn't a bad thing. Like, that's completely human.
Yeah. Okay. So when people are figuring out their values and they have them set, especially with like spending time with family, like is that like a good goal to have, or do you need to, are you saying dive deeper into that as well?
I would dive deeper. Spending time with family is fine. I would think that most people have about 4 or 5 values, not necessarily goals. The values then are going to define what those goals are. And the way that, if you're not sure about what your values are, how I would go about looking at them is, where do you spend your time and where do you spend your money? So if you look at 2024, where did a lot of your time go, right? If it went to, and are you happy with where it went? The same thing with money. Like, what did you spend money on? I spend a lot of money on being parts of groups like Go Abundance, flying to events, like all of that stuff, right? And so clearly it's really important to me to have a sense of community, right? And that's one of the goals that I have, is connection. And connection to me, sorry, not goals, that values. The connection piece is not just person to person. It's also my connection with myself, my mind and my body, food, all of that. So if you can then distill down to like 3 or 4 values, you can then come up with goals that are going to help you serve those values, and also check those goals and be like, well, what value is it really supporting? Because like I said, there are so many things out there, even if it's like, so I actually just looked at a friend's goals this morning. And one of the goals that he had was to write a blog post. The 3 things that he said he wants to work on this year. So he's a hard money lender. He also tutors kids and is creating a course. And then he works a W-2 job. So his goal was to create a blog post about sales. I was like, great. Which of the 3 things that you're working on this year does that actually fulfill? Mm-hmm. He's like, none of them. I was like, I'm all for you doing a blog post about tutoring that's going to help you bring more clients in for that. Mm-hmm. But just creating a goal just for the sake of, yeah, I just want to do it because I want to do it is fine. Mm-hmm. But then also realize that the likelihood of you getting it done is going to be slim to none because it doesn't fit in with anything else that you actually care about.
Right. And so I guess when we're listing out these goals to listing out these values to then create these goals, do you have like any exercises or anything that people can practice if they're not really sure what those values are?
So with values, yes. I would even, like, if you want to send me your list of values, just know I'm probably going to push back. One of the values that a friend of mine has was grit. And I was like, cool. So you want more grit this year? Mm-hmm. Like, you want more hard work and, like, you know, really struggle? And he's like, no, that sounds terrible. I was like, right. So, like, yes, you have grit, but that's not a value that you're, like, aiming towards. But anyway, so once you have your values, the way that I set up my goals is I look at different parts of my life and I set goals for those gardens, mm-hmm. because it helps me feel more streamlined. So like health is a really, really big one, right? So like for me, and we kind of talked about this on our call, meal prepping is a big one. Mm-hmm. I'm really freaking bad about eating as much as I should be and when I should be. Mm-hmm. And so I look at health, whether that's mental, physical, spiritual. I look at community. Mm-hmm. So that's like the people around me. I look at financial goals / goals for the business. Mm-hmm. And I look at bucket list goals. So like, what are some things that I definitely want to do that are incredibly fulfilling for me? Mm-hmm. And so when I then look at those 4 categories, I can very clearly set up goals for each of those, which I can then break down even further into what does it look like weekly? What does it look like monthly? Mm-hmm. And how do I track that I'm actually meeting these goals? Right. So you brought up spending time with family. How do you track that? Right. What do you want it to look like?
Like, I mean, writing down the calendar, like family dinner.
Is it phone calls? Oh. Is it dinners? Is it, you know what I mean? Like there's so much variability there. Mm-hmm. And maybe what you're tracking then is touch points, right? Like how many touch points did I have with my family this month? Mm-hmm. Maybe my goal is to have 5. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's face-to-faces, or maybe it's reaching out to different people in your family. So how many different people did you talk to? But there's so many ways to track the things that you want to happen. I just think that the most important part is the tracking.
I love that. So I'm glad you brought that up too. So you make a goal, so you have to make that goal in order to track, or do you track first, see if you're happy with it, and then make that goal?
So I make the goals. I then think about them and I go, okay, do I want to really commit to these goals? What is this going to help me do? Why? Why this goal? Mm-hmm. And that why kind of ties back into what you said prior, which was like, okay, am I just borrowing somebody else's goal because I feel like it would be a cool goal to have? Mm-hmm. Or is it something that's really going to drive forward the things that I want in my life?
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Once I have that, then I track. Whatever you track grows. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with money. It's the same thing with anything in your life. As soon as you begin to pay attention to it, mm-hmm. you'll be able to move the needle forward.
Okay. And do you feel like, because I know there's different phases of people's careers and their lives, so I guess is it okay that values change within a period of a year, or do you want it less than a year, longer than a year?
I am all for the power of the pivot. I think it's so incredibly important for people to know themselves well enough. Like it's feeding back into that idea of like, if you start a book, you have to finish it. Why? I don't like this book. This book doesn't, like, I can't read this book. This book sucks. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I am fully like, I think a lot of times the way that we're raised, it's actually harder for us to give up on stuff than it is for us to continue with it.
Mhm. I mean,
So I'm all for that.
I feel like because I feel like you've heard that just growing up, like, oh, if you start a sport, finish it, stick with it, because they say it's supposed to increase not confidence, but I guess discipline. You don't find that true?
I do find that true. At the same time, I think that we err on the side of sticking with things longer than we should,
Mm-hmm.
or like for other
Mm-hmm.
reasons. Oh man, if I leave this, then I'm really gonna let down my coach, or I'm really gonna let down whoever it is. It's like, or you just choose what's right for you and you do that and you be okay with that.
Yeah.
So there's no one right answer where I'm like, yes, definitely stop, or yes, keep going. I think it all depends on the situation and what you really want. But if you have a good reason for stopping, there's no shame in stopping.
Okay. And when we have these goals, like how do you like help your clients like incorporate those goals into like realistic like expectations in like their everyday life? Is it just setting those I need 10 touches and then figuring it out, or is there more of a system to
Can we
it?
work through an example?
Um, like say, like if one of my goals is to close on 2 properties this year, how would you, so like, I guess, give me advice on how do I
I got you.
divide that up at day to day?
So, so your goal is to close on two, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could track at the end of the year, did I close on two? I think that's a weak goal. What you can, because you don't really have control over whether or not you close on them or don't, right? Like things can fall through. I like to track the things that are in your control that are going to get you closer to that. So that could look like, look at 5 deals a week.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have that habit of looking at 5 deals a week, do you think that's going to get you to close on two? Maybe
Yeah.
it's cold calling. You know what I mean? Like it's whatever the action is that you have control over that you can do
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly, whether it's like I said, calling people, wholesaling, going to meetups with investors to learn, like whatever it is that's going to get you to that goal, instead of tracking that goal because you don't necessarily have control over it, track the habit. What's the habit that you can start that's going to get you there no matter what?
Okay. And how do you see entrepreneurs balancing these business goals with like their personal goals?
It depends on what the goal is. I don't have a
Like,
blanket answer.
like, okay, for example, we just found out that our fur baby Taco has a tumor in her kidney. So we decided that this year is going to be the year of Taco. And so we're going to be doing, everything with her, but like trying to balance, spending time with family and Taco versus, making sure I hit this goal of closing on this many properties. I guess, I know that people say the 50-50 balance isn't there, but I mean, how do you kind of navigate it to where it's close, or is it okay that it's not close?
I'm assuming not all the time is going to be spent towards taco.
Yeah.
So it's really a question for you of how does prioritization of those things look like?
Mm, okay.
And how do you find that balance? I can't tell you how to create that balance because I don't know what balance is going to feel good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Your balance is going to look very different than mine.
Okay.
Because for me, maybe it means that I'm bringing my dog to, and I don't know how, is it a dog?
Mm-hmm. The
Um,
small one.
like, are you bringing your dog to every event that you go to? Are you going to the park with your dog multiple times a week? Like, however it is, those things aren't necessarily conflicting
Mm-hmm.
goals. There's room for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's room for all the goals that you have. And it's up to you to create that balance and really find out, like, play it by ear and be like, okay, well, this week I kind of leaned more heavily on taco, but I felt like I didn't really do my stuff. Where can I find the time
Mm-hmm.
to change that?
Mm-hmm. Do you ever see, I guess, people go through like that mental exhaustion or burnout when they're trying to juggle too many goals
Of course.
or too many values?
I think I think it happens to all of us, and I think a lot of it is trial and error, and that's okay. And that's where like I'll bring back play again, like play with them and see what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one right answer, and just because like even we look at like morning routines.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read Miracle Morning?
Yes, yes.
So like
Absolutely.
his morning routine is like actually pretty long.
Hmm.
And I've tried that on and I was like, maybe I need a morning routine that has all of these steps. And it's like, no, that's not sustainable for you. Like, let's not do that.
Hmm.
But I've pulled and borrowed ideas. And so there's this level of like exploration of what really works for you. And I don't think that at any age you have all the answers. Like I think as you move through the journey, different things are going to be really important to you
Hmm.
and things are going to look different. And maybe you as an investor will look different in 2025 than it will in 2026. And that's okay. That's growth.
Yeah.
So just having grace for all the things that you want. I don't know if I answered the question. I think I
Yeah.
did.
No, absolutely. And so I guess so say at the end of the year, I only close on one property or like because I know I see investors all the time, get down because they didn't hit their goals. Like what kind of advice would you give to someone to I guess not let that weigh on them or how do they get past not meeting their goals and keep going?
I have a question. Why two?
That was something I threw out there. I mean, realistically, I feel like I was shooting for three, like personally.
Why
Um,
three?
why three? I feel like three is doable with balancing a W-2, family, family illnesses, taco, just with everything that's going on personally. I felt like three was something that I could do without necessarily burning myself out.
Okay, so it's also really, really important for you to have the clarity on why you set that goal, right? And you talking about it being like, well, three's manageable. I'm not saying 100,
Hmm.
right? Like if you said 100, I'd also be like, why? Why 100?
Hmm.
So I think it's really important to figure out too, why are you choosing that certain goal?
Hmm.
And how would you feel if you closed on two at the end of the year? I'm asking you.
Crappy.
Why?
Because like I don't like, when you set a goal and you don't achieve it, it's kind of I don't know, embarrassing. Like I don't know. It feels embarrassing. I'm not gonna lie, to be 100% honest.
Okay, for the sake of outwardly, I said I was going to do three, but I only did two, or because you also understand that like I did all the things that I said I was going to do.
Hmm.
Um, yes, I only hit two, but like two's still a large number. Like it's not zero.
Yeah.
So I think really sitting with why does that feel embarrassing?
Hmm. I guess when you take it's like you're taking act, it's like I'm taking action, but it didn't end with the result that I'd wanted. So it's not that I'm doing nothing, it's just I'm taking actions on certain things that didn't lead me to where I wanted. So it almost feels like okay, I did what I needed to do, but why did I still not achieve that goal? And then it makes me feel like I'm the problem.
Okay, but what part of it feels icky? Because you said you would and you didn't, like because everybody else is gonna think poorly of you? Like what part of it feels gross to you?
Yeah, I guess other people's opinions,
Well
like
then
hoping to do.
you gotta do some work on how you feel about other people. Because like look, I I know that no matter what I do, I'm gonna feel good about
Hmm.
myself. That's really important to me. And we talked about confidence before.
Hmm.
That is exactly it. That I am confident that I did the things that I could do to make it happen. At the end of the day, how many properties I close on isn't always in my control. If I bid on 100, right? Like if I do the things that I need to do, I bid on 100 and I just can't make up the numbers and they go to different people because they don't want to work with investors.
Hmm.
That's not really on me. I did everything that I could do and I can sleep at night because I know that, yeah, I said I was going to close three. Well, I'm fucking proud of two
Yeah.
and be proud of two. It's how you feel about it. I think as long as you feel good about it, nobody is going to be like, how dare you only close on two properties instead of three, you piece of crap. Like,
That's what I expect people to do. No, I'm just kidding.
uh-huh. Yeah, because that's normal for everybody to be like, come on, Miranda, like, what are you doing, girl? Lazy, No, those are all stories that we tell ourselves. Like,
Yeah. And one of the things I love that you said about confidence too is that at one point it just becomes a choice. It's like you can only do something so many times, put in so many reps before it's up to you to have that confidence in it. And that's really stuck with me since you said that,
Thank
by
you.
the way. So if anyone is here, is confidence is one of the things you guys want to work on this year. At some point, she told me that it's a choice, and I was like, and every day I wake up and think, okay, I'm choosing to be confident today. I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
think people mirror kind of how you present yourself. So, like, people tell me all the time that I'm really confident to them, right? Like, I seem really confident.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's because I chose to feel that way, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what they see, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I really think so often it's how we perceive ourselves and what we say outwardly in that perception,
Mm-hmm.
and what we do and how we carry ourselves. And I think that speaks volumes for other people. But you have to choose it first. There's no way that anybody around you can make you feel confident.
Okay. I love that. So I'm actually curious. So when you met me, did I seem not confident? Did it reflect?
Did you seem not confident? You seemed, um,
Be
you,
brutally honest. It's okay.
you, you yourself, you're very warm, you're very open, you're very bubbly. And I feel like you're still looking for outward approval of other
Mm-hmm.
people to fit in, which is normal. I definitely did that for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we all do. I still see that happening with me in a very, very deep way. Um, and I think it's also very human. Um, the only reason that I brought up confidence was because you brought that up. Like you shared that like that's one of the things that you really want to work on and you really want to have.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes with just like mental work. I feel like the level of comfort you have, and I'm like, I don't know this. This is me guessing. This is me just like reading you. So I could be totally wrong. I feel like you feel comfortable with who you are, but you don't necessarily always feel comfortable to call yourself an investor. You don't feel confident in that sphere of like, this is what I do, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. You're right. Like I do. I feel confident in myself, but yeah. I guess I worry. I guess a little bit work because I've worked on this with my therapist before too, and something I'm still working on is, you know, I guess I worry that if people look at me a certain way, or if I call myself an investor and then I don't meet people's expectations of the image they have for me, then it feels like a disappointment almost, but something that But I also know that other people's opinions aren't my truth, and that's something I'm still reminding myself.
I think also this idea of like expectations.
Mm-hmm.
If I call myself an entrepreneur, what do you expect of me? If I call myself an investor, what do you expect of me? And it doesn't really matter because your expectation is based off of your experience. And so I can't possibly, like, maybe the investors that you've met own multifamily only. And here I am who, like, I'm a person who has an Airbnb. I don't actually, but your expectation would not be aligned with my truth,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not because you're wrong or I'm wrong. It's just different.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, it's not fair for you to expect anybody to view you in a certain way
Yeah.
because their experience is different.
Mm-hmm.
And just because it's at odds with your reality doesn't mean that either of you is wrong,
I like that.
if that makes
I feel like you need
sense.
to let that settle in. You need to let that sit and marinate. I don't know what the right word is, because that's so true. And it's like you really got to take that to heart. And it's something that's like I know, but I'm still kind of like accepting, because I feel like I see this problem in a lot of newer entrepreneurs too, when they have a goal of wanting to be on social media more. They are that fear. And that's when I started on social media too. I was scared of putting myself out there because of people's
Perception.
opinions, yeah, perceptions of myself, and whether I was going to put off the right perception, or social media, anything can happen. And then, I got comfortable, and then I kind of got over that, and I was able to be more comfortable with myself the more I put myself out there. But I guess when you're letting that settle, what are things that people can do every single day to kind of work on this and to be able to move past this?
I think identity is a really big topic, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. I think a lot of times you make moves in your career, in your life, and your identity doesn't always catch up as quickly. Like, you actually have to do work to make both of those catch up to themselves. For me, I had mentioned I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life. I wouldn't have called myself an entrepreneur. Like, if you asked me, what are you? I'd be like, oh, I own a business. Um, Only because I never felt confident enough to own that title.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, an entrepreneur is like doing big things, and like, oh, I have a learning center, like I'm nothing special, whatever, right? Like, I just have a little business here. And so when you watch how people talk about themselves, a lot of times it's because of the fact that their identity hasn't caught up. And identity really is just like being able to own that title. So actually, one of the guys at the event where you and I met, he is a new entrepreneur. He owns a really amazing company. He's also in real estate. Tori, I don't know if, so he was like, oh yeah, I own a business. And I was like, you're an entrepreneur. I need you to tell me right now, I'm an entrepreneur. and, and so he's like, I'm an entrepreneur. I was like, I need like more confidence. like say it out loud. And I'll tell you, I felt really shitty after that meeting. I was like, maybe I pushed him too hard. Like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. He just posted last week. He's like, holy crap, like having to say that out loud really made me realize that I was not owning that title at all. And I was not like letting myself believe I'm an entrepreneur. Like, it felt like this thing that's up here and I'm down here, I'm not there yet. But really, it's up to us to create that shift in identity. And if you ask about a practice, the practice is like really thinking about what future self you'd like and feeling into why are you not there yet? Like, what tells you that you can't call yourself that yet? And thinking about, well, are these actually real things, or are they perceptions of other people?
I love that. Because it's crazy how strong our perception is. Like, we strongly feel like our perception is reality when 99% of the time it's not.
Totally.
And I feel like that's why people feel like, oh well, my perception is an investor, so I'm not, and everyone else doesn't think I am because I don't think I am, and it's like this circle of
How many investments do you think you need to have in order to call yourself an investor?
Oh, I don't know if there's enough. I mean, it's funny because I'm okay with saying it, but to feel comfortable when I say it is
It's
that.
absolutely imposter syndrome, 100%. I'm going to tell a story.
Ooh, okay.
But before that, I really want to ask you, how many properties do you think you need to have to call yourself an investor?
Personally, I feel like when I get to 5, I'll feel good.
That sounds like the goalpost moving.
I know. Okay, I guess if I hit 3, then
Okay. I have one investment property. Can I call myself how would you feel if I'm like, I'm an investor?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Because
so
when it's coming from someone else, it's totally fine. Like,
what we've gotten down to is that you need one investment property in order to call yourself an investor.
yeah.
Not 5, not 3.
Yeah. Why is this so easy though to like be okay with like other people's perceptions and other people's, opinions of investors, but then it's like I don't know if it's too high or what's going on that I can't accept, or not accept, but just struggle with the comfortableness with that word.
Because it's easy to feel like an imposter, like Art Ventures just said. So the first retreat that I ever went to, I was in a room with 5 people, and one of the guys there He is like amazing at real estate. He has $1 million company, like millions of dollars, like 10 million every year kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, like I'm not anywhere near that, by the way. Like, let's just be clear. I'm not near there. I don't know if I want to be near there, but I'm not there. And so he starts it off by saying, I need to say this for myself. I deserve to be here. And all of you deserve to be here too. And I was like, what the fuck? You have imposter syndrome? Like, you're so successful? What do you mean you deserve to be here? Like, you're like top of the food chain. I can't even believe I'm in the same room as you. And so it really, like, it helped me realize that that happens at every single juncture. Like, every single level, you're going to feel like an imposter. So that means that it's within you and not outside of you. And so I think over time, you kind of are able to identify it, and you're like, wait a minute, like, this is me feeling like I'm an imposter. This is me creating this. Yes, Patrick, totally agree. Also, hi. It's literally insane how much it changes. And every single time you grow, everybody in the room feels big again, right? You're like, oh my God, wow, now that's the new goal, right? Like when you have 5 properties, you're then gonna be like, holy shit, when I have 10, that's gonna be a lot.
Yeah.
And then you get 10 and you're like, okay, well, can I call myself an investor now?
Yes. But you could have called yourself an investor all along.
That's what I'm saying.
So I guess I know imposter syndrome is a big one. I guess what other big challenges do you see entrepreneurs facing as they, begin to scale or they begin to try to balance family and personal goals with the business goals as they're building their business?
I see a lot of times people creating their own rules about things. I did this for a long time. Like, I will never miss a meeting. I will never reschedule a meeting because that makes me this like really reliable person. And I get so caught up in that I forget about, well, actually my values would be to sleep in and like reschedule that meeting, and that person isn't going to hate me. So I think people pleasing is a really, really big one. You're afraid of how they're going to react. And so you bend and not create boundaries and not do all of the things. That happens a lot. And I think the other thing I see a lot of times is shiny objects, which we've talked about before, where you're like, oh yeah, I want to do that thing and that thing and that thing, and that thing seems cool, even though it has nothing to do with anything that really aligns with who you are.
And so when they're kind of struggling with these challenges, do you see them procrastinating because because of these challenges, or is procrastination a problem or challenge in itself?
No, I really think that when you're not aligned, like if you think back to school, the classes that I didn't want to do and that I procrastinated on were ones that I really didn't care about. So I feel like it's a very quick test to see if you're fully aligned, because if you're excited about something, you're going to want to do it. If you're not excited about it and it feels like a drag, you're going to create all the reasons in the world not to.
Okay. And do you see people getting like mentally exhausted, and how do you see people balancing that? Like the decision fatigue, or just, I guess, because like the stress between family and business. Do you see people getting fatigued at all with that?
If they create those rules for themselves, yeah. I mean, I think it happens at any level when you have a lot going on. By Patrick. Um, and I don't know, like I think it happens to all of us regardless, just because life happens. And like you said, like family, people get sick, things happen all the time. And that causes friction with all of the goals that we have. I think a lot of times when we set goals or when we create ideas, it's like best case, right? Like best case, I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week. But at the same time too, you have to remember that life happens, and I may, knock on wood, twist an ankle or something, and then I'm out of commission. Like, you always have to be okay flowing with it and pivoting.
And when you find someone, I guess, in that procrastination phase, you say you would tell them to kind of take an inner look at yourself and be like, something's wrong?
I think what I found before, a lot of the fitness coaches that I used to work with would be like, oh, you're just not disciplined, you're just not motivated. It's like, no. The ones that I started to work with more recently have been like, what's going on? Why? Why are you not actually doing this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And when you really get down to the why, I think it becomes much clearer
Mm-hmm.
what's in the way, what's really in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be that I don't actually want this. Or it may be that I'm not planning my day correctly. Or it may be that I'm not making time. Like whatever it is, I think getting down to why it's happening is incredibly important. That's where all the answers are. And there's no shame. Like I think that it makes no sense to shame anybody for not meeting goals.
Yeah. I remember Rick, gosh, I can't remember what book it was. It'll come to me, but where they said to ask yourself why 7 times. Have you heard of that?
Never.
No? Oh my gosh, okay, I'll try to figure out where I heard this from. Maybe it was Brandon Turner. It was either Brandon Turner, maybe one of his books, but he said to ask yourself why 7 times, and every time get deeper. It's like okay, why do you want to invest in real estate? You want 2 properties, why 2 properties? Financial freedom, why financial freedom? And you just ask yourself that 7 times, and it's supposed to get you really deep into the kind of the behind the scenes of your goals and your values. So I thought that was
Absolutely.
pretty cool, but I need to try that.
Yeah.
You do that.
Why? Just kidding.
And I mean, there's just so many, like when you're setting these goals, there's so many, I guess, different strategies out there, there's like the Grant Cardone method where, it's like what was it, like 10, 40, 40, 10 or something like that? I don't know if you've heard of that.
There's
Um,
so many ways.
or like the 12-week year, I guess, is there a certain strategy that you find has worked best for entrepreneurs and real estate investors in general?
I want to preface it with right now, not in California, but everywhere else in the world, it's winter time. And it's also okay to not want to goal set right now. Like right now, I'll tell you, I'm not setting any goals. I am chilling, I'm relaxing, I am resting. Um, and only because it's really important to me to set goals that I'm going to feel really good about. And so, like, I'm literally just hanging out and I will set goals probably March, maybe February. But I take time to really get clear on what I want. And I also don't push myself to set goals just for the sake of setting, like, just for the sake of like the year is over. Well, now I have to actually set goals.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really up to you when you do that. And I think that just because everybody else is on this calendar year of like, okay, well, it's a new year. Nature, it's not a new year yet. Like, wait till spring. When it's spring and everything is like blooming, I will set goals. I will come up with things that I want to do. I will feel the fire behind all of the things that I want. And right now, I'm not feeling that way. And I'm perfectly okay with sitting in that and not coming up with a list of things.
Okay. Take this time to work on your values, figure out what you want.
Yeah, just really feel into, like, if you don't feel like setting goals, that's okay too.
Yeah.
You really have to get clear on how you're feeling and what your body's telling you.
Yeah. Listening to your inner thoughts, your inner feelings, getting rid of all the distractions social media brings and all like we call it different methods like burr.
But also like remembering that you're not late for anything, right? Like I think it's so easy to play the comparison game, right? And like, oh well, she already has, like, it's 2025, she already has one new investment and like I don't have any, and like, oh my god, I'm gonna be late. You're not late for anything. You're perfectly on time, and like you're not on anybody's schedule, you're not on anybody's time clock. You got started when you did, because that was the time for you, and that's not everybody else's time, and that's okay. There are people who are going to start when they're younger than you by a lot. There are people who are going to start when they're older by you. It doesn't really matter. I think really being comfortable with your own pacing and your own goals is like a huge step.
Yeah, absolutely. That inner peace that we're talking about. Inner peace with yourself. Okay. I'm letting this sit. And so, and okay, so say springtime comes, you have your values, you have your kind of goals to match those values. What is the best way, I guess, or have you found that there is a best way, or if everyone's different, to start implementing them?
What I like Habit Share. It's an app. It's free. You can put some of your habits on there. So, like for example, one of my habits is drinking more water. And it's not more. I like to quantify it. So, like drinking a gallon of water a day. And so you can then check off every day. And what's cool is you share it with a bunch of friends. So that creates a level of accountability. And also, like when I see my friends check off their goals, I'm like, oh shit, I didn't track all of my habits today. Or like, I said I would read 5 pages and I didn't. So I think it really helps kind of keep you accountable. I also think like I love displaying the goals that I have. I can't really show you because it's on a blackboard, but I have my goals on a whiteboard, a blackboard. And I look at them because I think if you are not looking at the things that you want to keep in mind and what you want to do, if it's not front of mind all of the time, like I have some friends who made it their phone background as well. When you can see that all of the time, it's going to help you stick to them. So I think one part is finding a way that works for you to track. And then part two is being able to keep it front of mind all of the time.
And I love that you brought up accountability. Do you feel like accountability goal partners is a thing, or people do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's helped me. Again, I think that as long as the people are actually also very accountable, like if you have a really crappy workout buddy who's like always making excuses, that's probably not who you'd like to go with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's whatever tools help you. There is no shame in using them, and even if you have to pay for it, like money is a really big driving force for me. So it's like cool if I'm not held accountable to this goal. Like if I don't work out 5 times a week, well, I'll pay you $500, right? And you're like, well, I'm gonna make sure that you go because I don't want this to cost you that much money. But at the same time, like it kind of helps you bring the motivation without having to find it every day.
And you said you also use that app to track your goals?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I like when you said earlier too, when you're tracking, like for example, like the family, that it just spending time with family doesn't mean in person. It could mean a phone call or really any other way of, messaging them on Instagram, anything, any sort of touch that you said, the touch point. So yes, do you see that also in business, like touch points with business?
What do you mean?
Like when you said like one of the ways you could track progress is by calling sellers, like could that also be like analyzing deals, different touch points? So you have 10 touch points, doesn't matter what it is, but as long as
whatever works for you. I think it's really important after like a couple months of you doing it, then being like, okay, well, is this helping me get closer to my goal? So for example, if we talk about like weight loss, if my goal is to lose 40 pounds this year, right? And one of the things that I'm going to track is not eating out. Well, okay, in a couple months, I haven't eaten out a single day, but have I lost any weight, right? Like, am I just eating junk, but eating it at home? Right. So like really being like, okay, is the thing that I'm tracking, is the habit that I'm tracking getting me closer to that goal? Sometimes you don't even know, even when it comes to spending time with family. Like try the touch point piece. And then you're like, okay, cool. Yeah, but I don't feel like I'm any closer to any of my family now. So maybe it really is about time spent in person.
Okay, I like that. Adjusting your touch points as the year goes, depending on how you feel about it. It all goes back to your feelings and like your just inner, I guess, thoughts and feelings and how
Awareness.
Yes, I like that. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you. Your awareness as well. Okay, so I mean, as we wrap up, I love all of this, and anybody who's just tuning into, I want to kind of recap everything we've talked about. But before we do that, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you feel like you want you want people to know, or that you feel is crucial in the goal setting process that we haven't covered?
I think the big takeaways are like, you don't have to set goals right now.
Mm-hmm.
And just, it's okay to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big one for me. And also, like, really think about, rather than outcome driven goals, i.e., closing 2 or 3 deals a year, think about the habits that you're going to need in order to obtain that outcome.
Mm-hmm.
That way, that outcome is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, again, it's things that you have control over. I have control over, for example, in my weight loss thing, I have complete control over how many times I go to the gym, what I eat, how often I eat. I don't always have full control over what that translates to in terms of like my body, right? Like I may eat great and within my calories and I may only lose 32 pounds, right? But like I can't be down about that because I don't necessarily care about that outcome. I care about tracking the right habits to create that outcome.
I love that. Thank you. I need to sit down, write down my values, figure out what my goals that align with those values, and then implement by creating the habits that'll get me from value to goal.
And if anybody wants to talk about this stuff with me, like please feel free to send me a DM. Like,
yes.
I love this stuff. So
you guys, please take her up on that offer. She's amazing. Like we did this small group session, as I said before, and if you guys send her your goals, she'll push back, but it'll be good for you. So she'll really help you dig deep and get into your whys and figure out what your true values are. And I love that you can bring that out in people, even if you don't even know them. So I love that. And so where is the best place for people to find you?
here is good. I'm pretty responsive to DMs and posts and stuff. Like, yeah, I think here's probably the best bet.
Okay. Perfect. Her Instagram is Lena Dubo. Make sure you message her. And Lena, thank you so much again for coming on. You're amazing. It's so funny that like I already wanted you on this live before I even ever knew you were a coach too. I could just tell that like your skills and your leadership and exactly how you said how you presented yourself and how you held yourself and how you talked and everything. It just your natural leadership like skills just came out naturally. So thank you again for coming on and sharing all of this with us. I feel like this really helped a lot. I know it helped me, so I hope it helps a lot of other people and that they start reaching out to you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye.